I will just get up earlier and I will just outwork everybody. And that's how I will build and how I will persevere and how I will grow. That's how I will be successful. If you are toxic to the team, if you are toxic to yourself, if you are toxic to the culture, this will not work out. So before anyone ever gets hired, that expectation is
I
set.
gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my old friends calling, told them nothing's for free. Told me time is money, dog, swear I paid all my fees. I was starving for this game, now my family can eat.
Welcome everyone to the Couple Nurses Podcast with your hosts Matt and myself, Peter. Just a quick few words before we start the episode. Make sure you guys check out couplenurses.com. We have a bunch of cool content there. Our vlogs are there, our YouTube video links are there, and of course all our show notes for episodes. If you guys want to look back at some information, it's all available for you on that link. And also don't forget to check out wearefrontlinewarriors.com. We have some very conscious, mindful, and wellness content over there just for anybody that wants to scour the web and just spend some time just growing on yourselves and growing like together as a unit. We also have some cool merch there on both website, Couple Nurses and We Are Frontline Warriors. Definitely check that out, and don't forget to follow us on YouTube. We have over 1,000 subs on YouTube. We appreciate everybody that checks us out on YouTube, and don't forget to give us the likes on all the Spotify platforms, all the Apple Podcasts, and all the audio platforms out there. So Matt.
Good, man. And we do appreciate the comments and everything you guys interact with us. We love reading it all the time. It motivates us to keep on doing what we're doing. So on today's episode, we're going to introduce you guys to our guest, Justin Allison. And Justin is currently a Chief Growth Officer at Lead Healthstaff. Justin has been in the travel nursing industry since 2001. He's been the number 2 employee at an agency from a startup all the way up to owning his own company. We talk about mindset, travel nursing, living your why. We even talk about the podcast a little bit. You guys ready for this? Let's go.
But Justin, give us some of your background.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, I first want to just extend the both of you gratitude for inviting me on the show today. Fired up to chat with you guys and to get into my origin story and how it would relate to our audiences. And I started as a travel nurse recruiter back in 2001, which makes me sound very old, but it was mainly because I was so young at the time, and it was a startup. I was one of the first 2 employees of the startup that the owner and his business partner actually started out of their house. That was a wild ride. They grew it within about 3.5 years from nothing to like a $50 million company. And they sold it to a publicly traded company, successful exit, 8-figure acquisition. So that was my introduction into the travel nursing world. And, about 2 years later, we had acquired the same owners of that company, had acquired the assets of another company. So, which just means the contracts and their database. And so we started up another travel nursing company for only about a little over a year. And that was then sold off too. So we started getting it going, but then ultimately it stopped because they decided to do something else. And then I hopped on with Rise, which I was, again, another startup in the travel nursing space. And that was a historic run for like 8 years. And that's really kind of where I grew up in the travel nursing space. And, in terms of, leadership and building a team and building a culture and just driving, the growth of a company. That was also successfully acquired. And then from there, I started up with my brother, co-founder. So the first time ever being like an actual owner of these startups with my brother, we co-founded a locum tenens staffing company. So that was the first time I ever pivoted out of travel nursing. And so locum tenens is traveling physicians and advanced practice providers, so nurse practitioners and physician assistants. We were getting that rolling about 2.5 years into it, starting to build some momentum. And then this thing called the coronavirus came out of nowhere and kind of blindsided all of us. And that, basically, killed our momentum there. But I believe the obstacle is the way. And that led me to partnering up with the owner here at Lead Healthstaff, where I'm the chief growth officer. And that's where I'm at today. And when I joined a little over a year ago, so June of 2020, there was a 10 total people, to include the owner, in the company. So again, functioning like a true startup. It is now, we've grown it to we have 35 internal employees. And so I've done basically everything from recruiting to account management to leadership to building, growing within the travel nursing community and space. So I'm humbled every day by it. I'm grateful, blessed, but yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
Justin, you have such a wide experience of everything you've done. And before we like dive into like travel nursing, I'm wondering, what does it take to do what you do? The caliber, the mindset, like what does it take?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak I guess my truth and my experience. And like, so for me, immediately where I go to with that is like, it's just outworking, everybody, your peers, your competition. And like, specifically, one of the things I've always like cling to, I guess, is like, I will just get up earlier and I will just outwork everybody. And that's how I will build and how I will persevere and how I will grow. That's how I will be successful. So for me, that's really like the catalyst of it all, is like, get up at 4 a.m., have a routine, have a habit, and attack the day and get a jump start on again, your competition or just what your priorities are for the day. And that has always led to, I guess, success for me, and just getting up early in the morning, having a routine and attacking the day.
Yeah, it seems like you're someone that helps building and creating things. Is that how you've kind of felt your whole life? Because you've been in a handful of startups, so you gave me that vibe.
Yeah, no, I love that question. And to be honest, like obviously early in my career, no, that was not really like, I never was really like, oh, set out to like, I want to lead, I want to build, I want to grow a company. I honestly, like, going back to the original company, is like, I had really no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know that this whole industry even existed. And so that the first experience, like, I still, after that, I was not like, oh, hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then it really wasn't till Rise where that was where it's like, man, I love hiring, training, and developing everyone that comes in, because that ties directly into culture. And I can only speak to healthcare staffing. There's nothing more important than culture, right? Which is a direct reflection of the human beings that you hire. And so it was going through that process at Rise where I truly, like, I love everything about this. I love building teams. I love leadership and growing a business. And so that's when it at some point in time, it clicked for me that I do like building this. I actually love this. I actually enjoy the team's success now more than I enjoyed my own individual personal success, if that makes sense.
That's deep. And culture is very important for nursing. And when I tell any nurse that I know, the first thing you do when you interview, or if you're on a travel contract, you're talking to the manager, ask them how the culture is, how the environment is, because you need cohesion in the work environment, especially as nurses. So when you do like your hiring, is there something that you look for? Is there traits that create cohesion and make everything stick as a team?
Yes, yes, there is, and I feel like you didn't even know this, but you just teed up the best softball for me that I love everything about 100%. So like, so obviously we have a very articulated ethos, right? So which is the character of the team, and it's a team that provides a disproportionate amount of value, a team that is never too big to sweep the sheds, which means do the little things, right? And that will give more than it takes, and again, plays the ultimate long game. So that's kind of like the summary of our ethos. Now there's very specific traits, from empathy to gratitude to grit to excellence. I can go on down the list: optimism, self-awareness, that make up the traits of our ethos. So what I do when hiring is I look for those traits in the individuals, right? And those are ultimately non-negotiables, as far as the traits, in that everyone that's being considered to join our team, doesn't matter if it's in compliance, if it's in recruiting, if it's in account management, is we look for that, we screen for that, and through that is how we create cultural cohesion, right? But it also, I guess, important point to this is that hiring for character, right, is what I aim to do every single time, and I will select character over talent every single day. And I go through that process through our non-negotiable character traits, through our ethos traits, and look for individuals that exemplify those, and of course that are hardworking and passionate about providing patient care, or impacting it how we do through bringing travel nurses to hospitals that are short-staffed.
Yeah,
So-
I want to real quick. I want to flip it around,
Yeah.
just for like a minute. When you hire somebody, let's say you thought they were a good fit, and they ended up being not a good fit and being toxic. How do you like figure that out? Like, who's the toxic person? How do you get rid of them? Or how do you
Yes,
undo the
so-
damage?
Oh, yeah, and you could ask every single person that I've hired at Lead Healthstaff that I set this expectation on the front end with everybody. If you are toxic to the team, if you are toxic to yourself, if you are toxic to the culture, this will not work out. So before anyone ever gets hired, that expectation is set that if you are toxic to the team, the culture, yourself, this is not going to work out. So, obviously hiring is a risk. You never really know, even when you feel really great about someone. I've made a lot of great hires in my career. I've also missed, I've had some L's. And so it makes that conversation a lot easier when you hire, so you set the expectations on the front end, and then say someone is toxic. And then it's like, okay, you sit down and let me remind you of the conversation of what we expect here, what we value, which is a team first environment. It is a 1000%. We believe in, sacrificing the me for the we, right? And that's not just internally, because that's what we believe in terms of supporting our clinicians or our clients. And so when you have to have those difficult conversations, and you got to confront the brutal truth, but it is much easier to do that when you set expectations on the front end. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay, being bluntly open right from the start. So you've been in the game since 2001 of travel nursing, and you talked about character. What are some character traits that make a good travel nurse?
Ooh, I love everything about this. Positive attitude immediately comes to mind. Positive attitude, positive energy, of course, is just contagious to others around you, especially when you guys know this from traveling. It's like you're going into a new environment, which is hard. Empathy, I think, is a universal trait that everybody should exemplify, and that's one that I believe in and try to practice every single day with everybody that I come into contact with. Now, this isn't a character trait, but I would say one of the biggest traits for a nurse, travel nurse, in order to be successful is flexibility, right? Needing to be flexible. Obviously, you want to have your preferences, and you want to know, like, hey, well, first of all, why am I traveling, right? Like, what is your motivation? What is your purpose for wanting to work as a travel nurse? But flexibility is key. And being an exceptional communicator, that's a critically important trait, right? You guys, I'm sure, have experienced this, and I'd love to hear a story of the good or the bad, but of like how communication has either propelled you forward in your traveling career, or has led to undesirable outcome. And so those are for sure, I guess, would be the starting points for me. You gotta have an open mindset, a growth mindset. I think, to be as a traveler, I think that's a very important trait, growth mindset. Because again, it's like you're gonna be facing a lot of new challenges and adversity, and Matt, you and I talked about this. We all have the ability to choose how we respond to those situations, right? So, am I going to choose to go into this with an open mind? Am I going to go to and see the positive in this challenge or this obstacle? Am I going to fail forward, after a mistake? All that really important stuff. So, off the top of my head, I think those are some of the most important factors.
For sure. From like a recruiter's perspective, what is something that really like annoyed you that a travel nurse did, or that would really bother you?
The number one thing is backing out of a contract or an agreement, not following through on their word after they've accepted it, right? And one thing, this is how, going back to when I was a recruiter, which I was for a very long time, true story, and obviously then moving into training and developing and leading large teams of recruiters, is I'm very transparent, right? I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, if there is in the situation. Again, it's back to setting expectations on the front end, and ultimately get to the point of where it's like, okay, before we move forward, right, before we even submit you for a job, is there anything outside of the pending interview that would keep you from accepting an offer? If there is, okay, cool. Let's talk about it. Let's talk through that. Let's solve that problem before we move forward. So at the point of presenting you for that opportunity, we've gone through everything: compensation, job, hospital, the work environment, the culture. What do I know about this facility, the location, housing, all the common deal breaker stuff, right? It go through all that on the front end. So again, and it's 100%. I'm not a self-serving salesperson. I actually push nurses to say, no, I don't want to get submitted, right? Because I want to make sure that they're 100% bought in. This is the right fit for them. And so, but if we get to that point, like, okay, yeah, no, there is nothing outside of the pending interview that would keep me from accepting an offer. And so we go through that process, and, interview goes well, they accept, sign a contract, but then, they ultimately back out. That's the number one thing. And I get it. Life happens, but I'll be very honest. I've talked about this too. I mean, of course, talk about it with my team internally, but I think this is a good moment to bring this up right now, because you guys have me thinking about it. Is like, the other thing is that true family emergencies happen, right? Like that does happen, obviously. And so super empathetic to that. But keep in mind, I've been in this industry for 20 years. Like, travel nurses use the family emergency excuse all the time to back out of agreements. And hospitals know this. Hospitals know it. We as agencies know that 98% of the time it's not true, which is very unfortunate for the 2% when it is a real situation. So that hands down is another thing it's frustrating. But we're all humans, so gotta roll with the punches.
Yeah.
I'm curious, from an internal standpoint, does the travel agency take a hit when they sign a contract and the nurse leaves? Is there penalties that you guys
they
pay?
can. Their hospitals can't. They I mean, it's pretty much written in every contract that they can impose fines and fees on it. Full transparency, does that happen every time? No. Can they do it every time? Yes. It just depends on the situation. And yeah, it definitely does happen. But I would, again, it's a case by case basis.
What's like the job outlook for travel nurses? Because you were definitely in the game for X amount of years. Have you seen like a steady increase in the jobs available and travel nurses coming into the market?
Yeah, I mean, the shortage has grown year over year over year, and it's the forecast too. You put the pandemic aside, which we'll dig into that obviously, but put the pandemic aside, is the nursing shortage in the forecast over the next 2 to 3, 5 to 10 years is just going to multiply, right? And so that's not going away. The demand has always been there. Of course, we have our historically slower times during the summer, and then, as you guys know, in the wintertime, things obviously pick up because people are sick, censuses go up in the hospitals, etc. So yeah, the demand just grows year over year, and sadly, there's going to be a nursing shortage for a very long time, probably for the rest of the time all of us are in actively in this space, and you guys working as nurses, and me being on the other side of it. And with like the pandemic, to talk a little bit about that right now, like the current state of it right now, again, with what I call like kind of the crisis boom round 2, right? It's crazy. Like, it is insane the amount of job orders we're getting in, and it's just accelerating like every day, every week over the last like 6 weeks. Of course, the rates are just skyrocketing back up to the $8,000 to the $9,000 a week contracts. Great point. I was just reading an article actually yesterday. Is Hawaii, you guys might have saw this, Hawaii just got approved like $46 million in funding to bring in 500 travelers because to help fight COVID right now, which I know is big for you guys going to plan on going to Hawaii. That I just read that. I think it was yesterday morning. I saw that article. 46 million, 500, over 500 travelers. Contrast, or to give some context rather, to the COVID boom last year that started in the fall. They brought in like over 200. So they're planning to bring in over 500. So what does that say? That says that this round is going to be even crazier than what we experienced. I mean, I can't go on record. I don't have, a crystal ball, obviously, and predict anything. But like even before reading that article, the sense we've had internally is that this round 2 is going to be even crazier in terms of the demand for the healthcare providers, the clinicians like yourselves, and I don't see it slowing down. I would be so shocked if it slowed down over the next 4 months. It might plateau at some point. We could be there, but like even if we plateau, it's just crazy right now with the demand.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's like almost like an emotional roller coaster because, like, as a nurse, it sucks because this pandemic is here and you're gonna have to deal with a lot of extra shit that you have to deal with. But like the positive aspect, you're gonna get paid more. So like nursing is like almost like a double-edged sword right now. Like you're not sure how you should feel. You should be happy that you're getting paid more, or should you feel upset because there's people getting sick? So nursing is definitely an interesting field to be in right now, and healthcare in general, because you're getting worked like on both sides. And like Warren Buffett said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And this is what I feel like travel nurses are doing. It's a pandemic. There's contracts there. Let's make some money, even though it does suck because people are dying. But might as well get some benefit out of this.
Especially if
100%.
Go ahead, Justin.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Paper, scissors, rock.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's unfortunate, but those nurses that want to pay off debt really quick or get fueled to start a side passion or side hustle, whatever case might be, this is a good opportunity for that. And I just wanted to take it a step back with the whole nurse recruiter relationship. So you've been on the other side for such a long time. If you are a nurse that's going into travel nursing and it's your first time, you have no idea what to look for, I find the nurse recruiter relationship to be very, very important. What are some things you could tell our viewers as a nurse to look out for a good recruiter?
For a good recruiter? Yeah. So 100%. And so I guess one quick side note to that for all like new travelers, nurse, like before you even reach out to a recruiter, at least go through this kind of mental process of like, first understand, why are you traveling as a nurse, right? Why do you want to travel? Is it because it's the pandemic and you can make $8,000 a week, pay off some student loan debt? Fantastic, right? Or you're like, you know what? Hey, I just want to go to one of the hot spots and really help because it's in such dire straits. There's a million reasons, right? Everybody travels for a different reason, right? There's some common threads, the high paying, flexible lifestyle that travel nursing offers. But first, understand why you want to travel and what's important to you, what your preferences are, because this is then going to tie into your question is like, you need to be able to communicate that and articulate that to a recruiter, right? So they can best serve you and they can best support you in your success for your next career move. So one of the biggest things to look for in a good recruiter, are they a good listener, right? Or are they a great listener? Do they actually listen to what you're telling them? And are they asking the right questions, right? Are they asking those questions of, tell me why you're interested in traveling nursing? Like what has inspired you to pursue this, right? What are going to be the most important factors for you? What are going to be the deal breakers? Outside of just like, tell me how much money you want, tell me what city you want to work in. Yes, that stuff's all very important, but dig a little deeper. And great recruiters will do that. They will ask, they'll do 20% of the talking, 80% of the listening, right? Good recruiters. And so that would be one of the very first things I would look for if I was a nurse, right? Like what questions are they asking? Are they listening to me? Are they able to like articulate back to me what I just told them? And that is, huge. Communication, again, which is a two-way street, but 100% is the recruiter responsive, right? Are they communicating in a timely fashion? Is their response rate is it a high velocity response rate to your communication, or when you need something urgent? Those are going to be the biggest things to look for in a good recruiter. On the flip side, avoid like the black plague, the self-serving salesperson, man. Anyone that's pushy, anyone that doesn't want to provide you with value or put your interests before theirs, hit the eject button immediately if you're a travel nurse, like 100%. Here's the unfortunate thing is there is more recruiters that are self-serving salespeople in our industry, unfortunately. So I'm like beyond like so empathetic to like the nurses that have a bad experience and get like kind of, a little jaded by all the recruiters that they talk to that are self-serving. So again, what does a good recruiter look like? It's someone that listens, that is empathetic, that can tell you the things that you don't want to hear, right? Meaning like, you know what? I'm not going to be the best resource for you because I can't support that. Meaning I can't get you that assignment based on what you're looking for. So based on that, I would encourage you to, work with another recruiter. And again, this is the most counterintuitive advice I think in the last 10 years is like, if you're a new nurse, you should work with multiple recruiters, right? Like that's just the reality of the game. And that's what's common is, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this too. So flip this, we'll flip this and you guys tell me from your perspective, but it's like, typically it's like a travel nurse will have their main recruiter and then they'll have a couple, side recruiters companies. So like on average, like 3 companies, recruiters that they're communicating with on a regular basis when they're traveling. So that's another huge thing. But what are your guys' thoughts on that kind of last part? I'm curious.
Yeah, we definitely always have more than one agency that we look into, just because you know how it is. Some agencies might have the same contract, but they might offer different pay. So the first thing that every nurse looks into is the pay.
Yeah.
Am I gonna get paid enough, and am I gonna get paid well? And then secondly, nurse usually looks at the experience. Is this a city that I want to go to? Because this paycheck's nice, but if I'm only doing 3 shifts and I'm in the middle of like Bufu, like Arizona, where it's just desert around, I'm probably not gonna take
Pigs
that.
Knuckle, Arkansas.
Yeah,
Redding,
like
California.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not too far from me. But I
had to throw that one in there.
So it's
Yeah, so there's always 2 aspects of the contract. There's always the pay and the experience. Sometimes if a nurse is just going for the pay, they're not going to really care about the experience. They just want that chunk of money, and they're going to hit the highest contract. But a lot of travel nurses aren't going there just for work. Not every nurse is going for a crisis contract. So they're only going to be working 3 or 4 days a week. So that leaves 3 or 4 days also for them on the table. So they want to also enjoy themselves. And what I like the most from my recruiters is if I'm picking a location, they know a little bit about the location. They'll tell me like a few recommendations of a restaurant to go to, maybe like where the gym is, where to go, where not to go. Because Matt and I have been on both sides of the spectrum where we did one contract through an agency and they were just pushing us to sign this deal.
That was our first one.
Yes, like they were making it seem like, hey, this is the only contract out there. If you don't sign it, someone else sign it. You only got like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it was at one point when Matt and I were like shopping at a store for something. We literally hopped out of the store, hopped in a car to go over our contract with a recruiter.
She's like, you got 1 hour,
Yeah.
man. Hospital needs to know. I'm like, what the heck's
Right.
going on?
They pushed this just giant urgency and took advantage of us being first time travelers. We didn't know what the hell to do. And the money looked nice because we were getting paid more than what we were getting paid in Chicago because we are going to work in Oakland. So obviously the pay is going to be a lot different. And even though we knew later on that, hey, we kind of got screwed over because we could have got paid a lot more than what we got. And that recruiter experience is a giant factor. And now I don't always look at the money. I also look at the recruiter and how they act and how they communicate, because I'm willing to sacrifice a few $100s a week and have a good recruiter that I know is going to be on top of things and I'm going to have a good time with and be able to communicate on like a weekly basis. And I know it's going to set me up for success in the future compared to just making a few $100 extra with somebody that I don't really have full faith in.
Yeah. She did buy you a cake for your birthday, so I feel like
Yeah,
she felt bad for us for
probably,
throw
dude.
that in there.
Better about it, you should have got 2 cakes, dude.
I want to take this.
Yeah, I mean that's. Go ahead.
I was gonna switch
Go
the
ahead.
topic, so I want to finish the recruiter. Go ahead, Justin.
Yep. No, I was just gonna say, like, don't let, like, your guys' time is so valuable. Like, don't let recruiters, this again for anyone that listens, don't let recruiters waste your time, right? And again, back to your guys' one of your guys' questions is like, a good recruiter won't waste your time. They'll be upfront, too. So
like you were saying,
thing just to keep
if they just see you as a walking money sign, you probably shouldn't go with them. And that's like a good tip for life in general. If you have like friends or coworkers or people that you hang around with that just see you as like a money sign and just see you as like a piece of money instead of like a human being, then you should probably stay away from them as well.
And I like how before we even interrogate the recruiter if they're the perfect fit, you kind of took it back and you said start with why. And why is that so important to figure that out?
Woo! I love this. I have to give a shout out to Simon Sinek, the author of the book Start With Why. And after consuming that exceptional piece of content years ago, that's like where it really like got burned into my mindset of why. Well, no pun intended. It is so important. And for me, it's like it gives you that like North Star, man. Like that, like there's that guiding presence of like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why, like for me, it's like, why am I showing up every day here at Lead Healthstaff to positively impact patient care, to positively impact the nursing shortage, to positively impact every human being that's on my team? Like, why am I doing that? And, like, why am I passionate about that? And it's like, well, it's like, I want to, leave a legacy, I want to leave that ongoing impact. Right. And for me on a personal level and professional, it's basically the same. As like, I want to positively impact anyone that I come into contact with. And so it's about that legacy, which is the ultimate long game. And so once you go through that, and it takes time, I get, again, just can speak from my own personal experience, like sitting down, thinking through it, talking it out, writing things out, like trimming it down at the core. What does it mean? And it means something different for everybody. Right. And so, it's like legacy, is the ultimate long game. And, that's something that, I'm super passionate about, and, fired up to, try to execute on every day. And it's a work in progress, it truly is. And it's just, being, once you figure that out, number one, number two, you can actually articulate it. Like, what is your why, and then, just every day showing up and, attacking, and, not losing sight of that. Cause it is that I can speak about myself, man. Like, I'll be very honest. Like, sometimes you can lose sight of that in the grind, right? But then you come back to it, and it will help recalibrate your mindset, and it'll give you that peace, in like, okay, I got this, man. I can power through anything because this is my intentions. This is why this is important to me, and this is what I want to do. So
Yeah, I think that's a
I
good
think
question
it's
to
critically
ask.
important.
Yeah, I think people should be asking themselves the why question with a lot of things that they do in life, especially if they've been doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I'd say it's someone that's been like trying to change but stuck in the same dead end job for years. They should probably reevaluate and ask them, why are they working this job? And I feel like for travel nurses, it's very important to also ask themselves why they're traveling. Usually, like I said, it's going to be money, but it could be for other reasons, and it's okay. A lot of nurses travel just for a new experience, just to try out a different state. And you should let your recruiter know that, because then they could better gear these packages and contracts toward you. Because if you're gonna go for like an experience, and let's just say someone says, I want to try a different state out, and they pick Missouri, and they're coming from like Oklahoma, where it's like, if you're going for experience, why would you really pick Missouri? Why don't you try like a coastal state where you might have some water activities where you could explore that kind of things, instead of just being stuck on land all around. So it's very important. The why question is hugely important for almost every aspect of your life, because you have to understand literally why you're doing these things. You're not just blatantly doing these things, because if you're just doing it just to do it, you're going to get stuck in a rat race, and you're never going to kind of improve or change any aspect of your life. And you're also not going to know when you meet your goals, because a lot of times, like with nursing school, imagine if we never asked ourselves after nursing school, like why do we do nursing? Why are we staff? We would have never found out about travel nursing.
Right.
That's something I feel like everybody should be asking themselves almost on a daily basis. Like, why do we do certain things? Why do we want these things? And you can find out a lot about yourself.
Yep. And if you like, one other point, you're making me think I could just add one other point to this, and why it's just to the general, why is that important? And when you can figure that out and what that means for you beyond anything, superficial, material, etc., and you can understand like, this is something I'm truly passionate about, then the game will change when you are faced with adversity. It will feel the grit and the perseverance of the grind, of when you understand I have a deeper sense of purpose to what I'm doing and why I'm showing up every day. Like, I would say, I go as far to say, like, man, like you if you don't understand what your why is, then it's going to be a lot easier to and when it's connected to a deeper sense of purpose too, to clarify, like, it's going to be easier to burn out. It's going to be easier to give up when things get really hard. And guess what? Life is hard. Building something is hard. Being a nurse is insanely hard, right? Like having to sacrifice, with, every 12-hour shift and providing that patient care to the patient and their family. Like what you guys do is insanely hard. And so, like, hey, if you have a deep sense of purpose as to why you're a nurse, other than just making, $9,000 a week, you're going to have a much longer, fulfilling career. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong or disagree with me on the nursing side. I'm obviously not a nurse, but I would imagine it will help with the longevity.
Justin, you're wrong. Only 10,000 a week would make me happy.
No, it goes deep, Justin, because I feel like what you're describing is a problem that we have in society where we don't, everything becomes so automated and we just feel like we're just like the cog on the wheel. Is we can't tap into that purpose. And just like you say, is you can't be motivated every single day, but you could have that internal fire, that inspiration, that compass that you said, that's just guiding you, that's just dragging you up, and you just know where you have to go, what direction. And however long it takes you to start that, that's on you. And I'm kind of curious. So you said, so we need to assess the why. How often do you take time to assess your why, your goals? Do you have like a weekly thing, monthly? Do you have like a CEO day that you take out once a week that you block everything out?
I guess it's for me right now, like I'm fortunate that I talk about our why, like on like a daily basis, like, whether it's with our team and not necessarily with our team every day, but I'm also like hiring all the time. So I'm constantly talking about our why. And so I don't have like I love where you were going with that. Like I probably should have a dedicated specific time, but I feel like I talk about it so much every day, or a day or two doesn't go by, more than a day or two where we're not talking about it. So it's always front of mind, because of that. And I think a lot of that is just a reflection because, building a small company and hiring and growing and, bringing people in and, that align with our why, that are excited, fired up to help us execute on our why, as an organization. So for right now, it's always top of mind because of the environment that I'm in, if that makes sense.
You're tapped into it.
Yeah. I have a cool question on kind of the business side of things. Is what's like the hardest obstacle that you kind of ran into when you're starting up these companies or you're helping up startups? What's like one big thing that people run into, or even you ran into yourself?
Yeah. I honestly, it's hiring the right people. That's kind of already touched on that, but that is early on, right? Until you really figure out like who it is again, the character traits for us, like until you have to go through a process. You have to go through a lot of failures and figure all that out. And that is, I think will always be in a startup environment, be one of the biggest challenges, is just hiring the right people, because you can't have, expectations that you hire someone that they're going to be as fired up as you as a leader or co-founder of a company, to help you build this, right? They're not going to have that same passion that you have. So you set recalibrating your own expectations for when you bring those people in, and that, they're obviously here to help you build this, but they're not necessarily going to, people have lives too. Like, you can't expect, like, I would never expect someone to, like, I work all the time and like, it's like, that's just who I am. And like, it's like, and so I don't expect, someone that I just hired to be a recruiter to work, 7 days a week. Like that would be silly of me, so I think back to your question, that hiring the right people is always going to be one of the biggest challenges of starting up a company. I think also too is like, are you, I've stuck to really all I've known, healthcare staffing. So it's like, is like, if you're trying to, start a company in a space you've never done anything in, I think that would be insanely challenging. I guess I don't personally have experience with that now that I'm saying this out loud, but I would say stick to what you know or what you're good at, or even more important, back to the why, what you're actually passionate about, right? If you're starting a company, you're gonna build a business, but hiring people, man, it's hard to get it right,
Yep. And then one more thing for travel nursing. What's like the hardest thing that you've seen travel nurses struggle with when they're like maybe starting off, or doesn't really matter how much experience they have? What's like the one thing that travelers just struggle with the most when dealing with recruiters that you've seen?
With the recruiters? So that's a great question. I mean, I would just say the understanding the process and understanding the expectations. I'll get a little more narrow here. Onboarding, 1000% onboarding, and that if you're new to travel nursing, and understanding the heavy lift that it takes. Like there's all the excitement. You interview, get an offer, you're pumped, we're pumped, get a contract in place, and then guess what? Onboarding begins, and it's a heavy lift. So that is a challenge. We are because we know, and we try to use foresight, early and often, and be proactive, about things that we know we're going to need upstream. And so compliance onboarding, we start, educating our nurses to like, hey, we're submitting you for a job. Go ahead and send me your physical, your PPD, your titers, etc. So we can just stack a little small win, because every little win builds the momentum for the big wins, which is ultimately getting you cleared to start your assignment. Because you guys have to do a lot of modules. You guys gotta go get drug screens. You guys know the drill, and like that is a challenge. And it's like, hey, understanding what is expected of me once I get to that point of a contract is signed and onboarding begins.
Yeah. I call it the 2-week warning. There's like a 2-minute warning in football. Same thing, man. Shit just hits the fan those last 2 weeks.
Yep.
When it comes to getting your car, transport.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's actually another thing. I was as you were building up to ask that question, I would say, and not necessarily specifically like with the recruiter relationship, but it's what Matt was just getting into right there is like one of the biggest challenges early on is like, oh, I'm going to this new location. I have no idea about housing or any like my way around this city or this new location, and then going into a brand new environment, especially if you're a brand new travel nurse, man, that can be overwhelming, and it can be, can cause anxiety, it can cause stress, and that's hard. It is a challenge.
Yeah, that's one of the things we didn't cover on this episode, but that nursing side is when you just have to, it's like you're peeling an onion, almost like you're just peeling a layer of your life, and you're letting go everything, your friends, your family, your environment,
you're crying,
your work environment, and you're just going into a new place. But one thing I love about this is the growth. The growth I had from travel nursing is irreplaceable. Me being put into a different city, state, job, the way you have to overcome adversity, it just really grows you. Probably grows you equal to moving out on your own, if not more.
Yeah. I mean, dude, that's 100% is like adversity is like the number one accelerator of growth, like in all aspects of it. I do want to quote actually so are you guys connected with my man Q the nurse? He's on social media. He was on my podcast. He said in the podcast, he's like, travel nursing is exciting until it isn't. And he was talking about what we were just like the challenges of when you're starting a new assignment for the first time, the location, all that. And like, that's very true.
Yeah. I have a question, because I've always wondered this from a travel nursing perspective. Agencies never give you the hospital that the contract is for until you sign that contract. Is there a reason why that happens? Because I was always curious on what hospital I'm going to work at, what hospital is contract from, but no one would ever tell me until I actually agree to that contract.
Ooh, well, I don't know I'm not going to ask you what agencies. We're not going to blast anybody. I don't believe in that. I mean, we do. We're very transparent up front. So that honestly seems a little odd, questionable, whatever company or companies that don't disclose that.
No, not always. No, because they always give us like a location when you look at the contracts, but not until you actually agree to it do you get that all information. We never got it before. Only time we got it beforehand is because we knew somebody more internally than a regular recruiter.
I've never had that issue.
But like when we went to Oakland, they never told us what hospital it's going to be before we signed it.
They always usually say like, hey, Alta Bates, or when I went to California, they'll say where I'm going to, because I want to do hospital research. It's different if you're on the job boards. And the job boards, they don't give that out to you.
Maybe that's.
Yeah, so on like on the marketplaces, which like like that, sometimes that's not listed, and sometimes we don't necessarily list that either. On like Vivian, for example. And so, but I mean, in the moment you connect with one of my recruiters, I mean, if it's like, for example, what's not listed on the marketplace, they will tell you what hospital that's at. And so we try to, I mean, we try to give as much, all the information that we know for every assignment, what, facility, location, etc. And I mean, we live in a transparent world, and it's just, and nurses want transparency, and we're all in on that, like in giving transparency. I think it's super important this year in time. So I want to ask if I can ask a question actually so in California, because we're talking about California, lots of you guys have traveled here. What hospital has been your guys' favorite facility to work at in California so far?
I don't really have a favorite. I like the one that worked in Santa Monica and Pasadena. They're both awesome. Like just try, because we were nurses in Chicago, so I feel like any hospital in California is so drastically different from the Chicago nursing, where I enjoy more no matter what. I don't really have a favorite because they treat us well in both hospitals that we went to for our last contract. But I just like nursing in California in general because it's a little bit, you can say, less hectic and you feel more supported compared to what it is here.
What I would say is I have a worst, which would be when I worked in San Diego. I worked for one of the Kaiser locations, and that's my first and hopefully my last time I'll ever work for Kaiser. It's just because of the way the hospital makes you feel. So you just feel more like you're just a troop in the hospital. You just get placed wherever, you float multiple times. I don't personally think it's healthy, or I don't think it's safe for patient safety at all because of the way we juggle patients all the time. So that was probably a negative experience I had working as a travel nurse in Cali.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the Kaiser floating policy is unique, and that is, I mean, that's hard work because they're like, at least in California, the only facilities that they will float you during your shift. And I imagine that's probably part of your experience that you didn't enjoy, is actually floating during the shift. And it is hard. And it is not, it's not easy, especially when you're trying to provide, the best patient care as possible if you're getting new assignments every 4 hours. And that's like but I will say, that and we work a lot with Kaiser, and they're actually, one of our bigger clients. And so they're not all bad, meaning there are hospitals that are, there are some, a lot of great facilities. And, and again, sometimes it's not always just the hospital as a whole. It can just be the culture of a specific unit. And this isn't just Kaiser related. This could go for any facility, but that where it's like, hey man, that's just bad leadership, on the unit at that, community hospital or whatever facility it is. And so, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire facility is a horrible.
And you make a good point about that, because, for example, when there's a unit full of travelers, usually there should be like a floating schedule or some kind of binder that tells us who's the last person that floated when it comes to travel nurses and even staff. So if I'm a traveler and I keep getting floated multiple times, but another traveler isn't, I think that's unfair, and it's just a poor system because everybody deserves a fair slate of getting floated and working on your desired unit.
Yeah. And they both did that for
100%.
us in both hospitals. Yeah, I haven't had the Kaiser experience, but it's also like perspective and a time of year, you could probably say, because I'm not sure every nurse gets floated as hard as you probably did. And some nurses probably do like getting floated. They probably maybe don't want to be stuck in the ICU all the time. Maybe they're kind of would like an experience somewhere else where they're not doing the same thing over and over again. They prefer a different unit, I prefer just to stick with ICU. So I guess it's just on a perspective basis. Like I don't like getting floated. I don't mind getting floated like once in a while, but if I'm getting floated like twice a week and I'm only working 3 days, like I would hate that too.
Yep.
Like it's not my thing. I prefer just to stay in the ICU.
What do you guys think? I'm curious to get you guys on this whole topic, but more when we're like looking at patient care and like how patient care suffers when does it suffer when you're having to float at that kind of frequency rate?
So I think patient care suffers. So when you look at shifts, like you can see the difference between the 8-hour shifts hospitals and like the 12-hour shifts. I feel like a lot of things get lost in communication with nurses working 8 hours instead of 12s, because we worked 8s in Oakland, and I feel like things didn't get passed on properly, and what probably leads to, but it's kind of biased because I mean we worked in that one place. But what I've noticed from the 8-hour shifts is things get lost in translation, and the patient care isn't as good as the 12-hour shift nurses.
Yeah. I would definitely say that it does suffer. Let me give you a quick little example. So you are a nurse, you're taking care of a patient, And this patient specifically has a little bit of dysphagia, so you have to crush the meds and put it into applesauce. That's not going to be on the electronic medical record that this patient needs applesauce. You have 4 or 5 different patients because you're floating in like PCC or med-surg. Hey, it's 11 o'clock at night, or let's just say 3 a.m. You got to go to a different unit. You got to drop all this. Here, give report. Now you're rushing to give report. Let's just say you missed that crucial information that patient needs their meds crushed in applesauce. The ongoing nurse never asks you that question. Sometimes that's just how it goes. 6 a.m. comes around, you're giving meds. Patient has dementia, and you just shove them pills, and they can't swallow. That could lead into aspiration. You get pneumonia. You can even end up on a ventilator. So that's just one little example, but definitely you'll miss information, and it's just better for the patient if you get that longevity of care with one nurse.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
But if you're going with like if you're going with
yeah.
how patient care differs from hospital to hospital, I think so far in California, the patient care has probably been about the same. I think even the weird thing is, even with like the staffing ratios and everything, I think the patient care in the Midwest and the patient care in California is still about equal. But I just feel more comfortable and more relaxed working the California ratios compared to working the ratios in the Midwest.
Yeah, no, that's a huge, I mean, that's a huge draw to travel to California too, is the ratio. That's one of the reasons why a lot of nurses want to come to California, because of the patient ratio mandate. So
it's a lot better on your mental health,
and
it takes a giant stress away from you.
Yeah, it's better for you as the clinician. It's better for the patient. I mean, the whole experience, the whole outcome is positively impacted with the ratios, or it contributes to a higher success rate with the care.
Because the same nurse could, let's say, like insert an NG tube, like the same, like a nurse is going to insert the NG tube the same way in Chicago as she is in LA, but the difference is going to be the patient interaction. Because if you're more stressed out, more kind of burnt out in the Midwest because your ratios suck, you're not going to always give like positive reinforcement or positivity to your patient or have a good conversation because you're tired, right? You want to get in there, put the NG tube in and leave, compared to in California where you kind of have a little bit more time because you have more support, where you can actually talk to this patient through it instead of just going in, doing the task and then minus leaving. Yeah. I feel like in California you have there's a better mental approach to things. The physical and patient care is about the same, but like the mentality and like the health of the nurse, I feel is definitely a lot better in California.
It's like, how can you provide empathy and getting to your patient when you're freaking drowning in tasks to do?
How can you like emotionally satisfy your patient or somebody else if you can't emotionally satisfy yourself because you're always burnt out and you're always tired? It can't work like that.
Yeah, that's why. I saw something. I mean, I just think today is like self-care. Like it's so important, man. You got to take care of yourself. So then you can make a more positive impact on your patients, right? And I mean, that's true across the board. I mean, I for sure believe in that and understand. It's it's self-awareness too. Like, hey, like, I'm in a bad state of mind, burnt out, whatever, stressed out. Guess what? That's going to affect my patient care. I think about that, not in the patient care term. I mean, of course, like in my team, but like on a personal level, like with my kids, like being a dad, like I apply that. Like, I'm like, man, I could be fired up, stressed out about something going on, all these fires all the time. But man, my children deserve the best. The best version of me as a dad. I gotta figure myself out first so I can go be a positive, dad to my kids. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I relate.
100%. Like if you can't be happy with yourself, like you're never gonna be happy with somebody else. And that's why some of the relationships fail, is because no one's truly happy with themselves. So how are you gonna bring somebody else along? If you don't know how to make yourself happy or know how to make yourself happy, you can't make anybody else happy.
Yeah,
because how many times have you like had a stressful day at work and you don't talk to anybody about it, or you don't bring it up that somebody pissed you off, or you had a big workload and you come home and for some reason you're irritable, and like your wife says something or a girlfriend or a kid says something and you like explode for no reason, and it just carries over from work. And that's how I feel nursing is too, especially without these ratios in the Midwest. There's nurses that are completely different people inside and outside of work.
Oh yeah,
it's wild. And it's all about emotional health and mental health.
Justin, we need a nursing revolution.
Emotional health, emotional intelligence. Yeah. What's that?
I said we need a nursing revolution, but that's a side note.
Yes. I'm all in it, man. I'm all in on it, man. Tell me what I can do. What do I need to do?
We need the Calm app for nurses.
Yeah. I love the Calm app.
But for me, that's putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Like I want to switch from a government standpoint, like how can we put
we should make the CEO always work bedside.
Yeah, give him a little, have him wipe a little bit of butt. Justin, have you ever wiped a little bit of butt?
I have 3 kids, so I've wiped a lot of butts.
Just the crazy
Not,
thing
not
about
on adults, but
the greatest thing about nursing, especially being a dude, is I never ever imagined my life revolving around having to wipe ass. Like never. Even if when I entered nursing, I never imagined how much ass I'm gonna wipe, and I never saw myself when I was looking back when I was a little kid and like thinking back like what I wanted to do growing up and my ideas and fantasies as a kid. Never have I ever thought about wiping this much ass in my life.
Yeah. How so? I love everything about the ass wiping. So like, how did you guys get into nursing? Like, what I think Matt, you and I talked about. I'm just curious since you just brought that up. What ultimately led for you to jump into the nursing game, if you will?
Nursing was initially I wanted to become a doctor, but then that much school wasn't gonna work out for me. I just can't be in school for that long. And then I thought about being like a police officer, but then my parents I was also born in Poland. My parents grew up in Poland during like communistic times, and my grandparents and all that. So they kind of pushed me away from that because they always saw the law as like somebody trying to take advantage of you. They don't think about it that way here, but back in Poland, that's kind of how it was. So they kind of pushed me away from that. And I always wanted to help people, so I kind of entered nursing. Like my sister was in a hospital for a few days, and that kind of showed me like what nurses actually do. That was my first kind of viewpoint of like what the nursing job entails. And I always enjoyed how like they took care of patients and were just so empathetic and just were there like taking care of business, but also communicating with you, explaining the process, what they're going to do, and also doing those things. That's kind of why I first went into nursing, just to help people. And then why we went to podcasting is I figured I could help people on like a larger scale. And that's kind of why I went to podcasting now while we're doing all the other things for the most part. Yeah. I always want to help you. I always wanted to feel valuable. And I always wanted to get that feeling of, hey, I'm here doing something that's benefiting you. That kind of motivation.
Yeah. How long have you guys known each other? Have you guys like known each other your whole lives?
Yeah, we know ourselves our whole lives. We went to grade school together.
Boys, man.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, we know each other for since like the first, second grade. Because we grew up in the same neighborhood, we went to the same school, and we just never lost contact. Like my parents moved to the suburbs, and maybe you and I lost contact for like maybe a few months, and then we just randomly wound up talking to each other again.
Yeah, we just played video games back in the day because we couldn't hang out, and then it's kind of funny. We somehow both landed into nursing,
Yeah.
So it's
That's wild.
Yeah, we did our application letters together and shit. We tried to get into the same school.
Yeah.
We had our first goal was let's try to get into the same university. We didn't due to like distance and stuff. And then we were like, let's try to land the same hospital job. We didn't land the same hospital job. So we're just like shit. We're trying to because we always like spending time with each other because we're always doing some cool shit. So it's like, why don't we bring it to work? It'll be fun. Let's make work funner. And we just never could land that. And then travel nursing came up and we're like, damn, this is like our chance.
Yeah,
this is because every time we try to work together or try to work on a project together, something in the world would break it apart, and then travel nursing somehow put it together, and it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Yeah, got it. That's cool. That's a super cool story. You guys should talk more about that. Share it. Well, maybe you have. I haven't seen it on an episode, but that's a super cool story.
Yeah, I found out for over the years that not a lot of people have these kind of relationships. Like people don't have friends for 20 years or 25 years. It's very, very fortunate.
Yeah. Shout out to that. I guess we got to create an episode about that, Justin. Thank you for the great idea.
Yeah.
Justin, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm out here in the world, online, of course, on Instagram, and at Justin Allison. However, that is the L's are the number 1, so the number 11. On LinkedIn, huge on LinkedIn, Instagram, as far as like my personal, I guess, brand, which is a direct connection, obviously, to podcast and company and everything. But Instagram and LinkedIn for sure. YouTube channel for the podcast that I host, Behind the Scrubs. So you can check us out there. And we obviously do all video, full video episodes, and then publish the audio to Spotify and Apple, all the major platforms, SoundCloud, etc. So that's Behind the Scrubs, the podcast. You can check us out there. Lead Healthstaff company, leadhealthstaff.com. You can connect us there. But online, social media, it's a new year in time, and so would love to love to, connect, just continue building a community, building our community. And, it's something, I'm super passionate about. And, I'm grateful, obviously for being, being involved in this in terms of the healthcare staffing and, travel nursing world. But yeah. So social media online, Justin Allison, or Behind the Scrubs podcast, or Lead Healthstaff, our company.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
Justin.
so much, Justin. We'll link everything in the show notes. See you on the next episode of anything. Take care, man.
See ya, man.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for having me on.